What flowering perennial would you plant once and keep forever, if you could only choose one? And be honest, are you building a colorful garden right now, or are you still staring at empty beds and containers, trying to figure out what actually survives long-term? Drop your answer in the comments, because by the end of this video, you're going to know exactly which perennials are worth your time, which ones bloom for years with almost no effort, and which plants can completely transform your yard into a low-maintenance flower paradise. I'm also going to show you the biggest mistakes people make with perennials that stop them from blooming properly. One simple mistake is why many gardens look weak after 2 or 3 years instead of exploding with flowers. Most gardeners waste money every single year buying short-lived annuals that die after one season. They replant the same flowers over and over, spend more money on fertilizer and replacements, and still end up with gardens that look exhausted half the year. Meanwhile, experienced gardeners quietly rely on a completely different strategy. They plant perennials once, let the roots establish, and enjoy bigger, stronger blooms every year with less work. Today, you're about to discover 15 of the best blooming perennials you can plant once and enjoy for years, sometimes generations. These are plants that thrive in containers and gardens, not just magazine photos. They attract pollinators, create non-stop color, survive difficult conditions, and reward neglect instead of punishing it. Perennial 1. Coneflower. Let's start with one of the toughest flowering perennials on Earth, coneflower, also known as echinacea. If you want a plant that survives heat, drought, neglect, poor soil, and still blooms like crazy, this is it. Coneflowers produce large daisy-shaped blooms in shades of purple, pink, white, orange, yellow, and even red, depending on the variety. The classic purple coneflower is the most famous, but newer hybrids have expanded the color range dramatically. Here's what makes coneflowers special. Once established, they become almost self-sufficient. Their deep root systems pull moisture from far below the soil surface, meaning they keep blooming long after other flowers collapse from summer heat. They bloom from early summer well into fall, and pollinators absolutely swarm them. Bees love them, butterflies love them, and once the flowers fade, the seed heads attract birds, especially finches. Coneflowers thrive in USDA zones 3 through 9 and prefer full sun. They tolerate poor soil surprisingly well as long as drainage is decent. In fact, overly rich soil often produces weaker plants with floppy stems. One mistake people make is overwatering. Coneflowers hate constantly wet soil. Treat them tough, and they reward you with stronger growth and more flowers. Another reason gardeners love them, they spread gradually without becoming invasive. You plant one small cluster, and within a few years you have a massive drift of blooms. If your garden gets brutally hot summers, coneflowers should be one of your first choices. Perennial 2. Daylilies. Now let's talk about the perennial that almost refuses to fail, daylilies. If there were an award for easiest flowering perennial for beginners, daylilies would probably win it. These plants tolerate bad soil, inconsistent watering, neglect, partial shade, heat, humidity, and even heavy clay soil better than most flowering plants. Each bloom only lasts one day, which is where the name comes from. But here's the trick. Mature plants produce so many flower buds that the blooming season can last for weeks or even months. Modern reblooming varieties are especially impressive because they flower multiple times during the growing season. Daylilies come in nearly every color imaginable, except true blue. Some flowers are tiny and delicate, others are huge and dramatic with riffled petals and bold patterns. The best part? Once established, daylilies multiply aggressively underground. A small clump eventually becomes a thick flower-packed mass that can be divided into multiple plants every few years. This means one plant can eventually turn into 10. They grow best in full sun, though many tolerate partial shade. USDA zones 3 through 9 are ideal, making them one of the most adaptable flowering perennials available. And if you're someone who constantly forgets to water, daylilies forgive you faster than most plants ever will. Perennial 3. Black-eyed Susans. If you want bright, cheerful flowers that make your garden look alive from a distance, black-eyed Susans deliver beautifully. These golden yellow flowers with dark centers create that classic wildflower look that instantly makes gardens feel warm and inviting. But don't mistake them for fragile wildflowers. These plants are extremely resilient. Black-eyed Susans succeed in USDA zones 3 through 9 and thrive in full sun, tolerate drought once established, and bloom heavily from midsummer into fall. They handle poor soil surprisingly well and often reseed themselves naturally, giving you even more plants every year. This is one of the easiest ways to create that cottage garden explosion effect without spending a fortune. Pollinators adore them, especially bees and butterflies. Birds also feed on their seed heads in fall and winter if you leave them standing. One reason gardeners love black-eyed Susans is the sheer amount of color they provide with very little maintenance. Many flowers fade quickly in late summer, but these keep going when gardens usually start looking tired. They're especially effective when planted in large drifts rather than isolated clumps. A big patch of black-eyed Susans waving in the wind looks absolutely incredible. And because they're so hardy, they're perfect for beginners who want reliable success. Perennial 4. Peonies. Now we move into the luxury category, peonies. A mature peony in bloom looks almost unreal. Huge, fragrant flowers, the size of dinner plates, explode in shades of pink, white, red, coral, and yellow. Some peony plants live for 50 years. Some survive for over 100. That means a single planting today could still be blooming long after you're gone. Think about that. Peonies are one of the ultimate plant once, enjoy forever flowers. Now here's the important thing. Peonies require patience. They often take 2 or 3 years before they truly explode with blooms. But once established, they become stronger every season. And the flowers? Completely worth the wait. Many varieties are intensely fragrant and make incredible cut flowers. One peony bouquet can perfume an entire room. Peonies thrive in USDA zones 3 through 8 and prefer full sun with well-draining soil. One critical mistake ruins many peony plants, planting them too deep. Their eyes, which are the buds near the crown, should only sit about 1 to 2 inches below the soil surface. Plant deeper than that and you may get leaves but no flowers. Once you understand that rule, peonies become surprisingly easy. And yes, deer usually avoid them too. Perennial 5. Salvia. If your goal is non-stop color with almost zero effort, Salvia deserves serious attention. Salvias produce tall spikes of flowers in purple, blue, red, pink, or white, and they bloom for an incredibly long time. Some salvias flower from late spring all the way into fall with minimal interruption. Here's why gardeners become obsessed with them. They handle heat beautifully. They tolerate drought extremely well. Pollinators absolutely cover them. And when you deadhead spent blooms, they often rebloom repeatedly. Few plants give you this much color for this little maintenance. Salvias also add important vertical structure to flower beds. Instead of everything sitting low and flat, their flower spikes create movement and height. Most varieties thrive in full sun and well-draining soil. They dislike soggy conditions, but thrive in hot, dry weather where many flowers struggle. USDA zones 3 through 10 are ideal. Hummingbirds especially love red salvias, while bees swarm the purple and blue varieties constantly. And because salvias combine so well with coneflowers, black-eyed Susans, and ornamental grasses, they're perfect for creating professional-looking perennial borders. Perennial 6, Shasta Daisies. There's something timeless about Shasta Daisies. Bright white petals, golden yellow centers, clean, classic beauty. These flowers instantly brighten gardens and pair beautifully with almost every other perennial on this list. Shasta daisies thrive in USDA zones 4 through 9, and they bloom heavily in early and mid-summer, especially when grown in full sun. They prefer well-drained soil and moderate watering, but become fairly drought-tolerant once established. What makes them valuable is their reliability. They come back stronger each year and form larger clumps over time. They also make outstanding cut flowers. A handful of Shasta daisies in a vase instantly makes a room feel fresh and alive. Deadheading helps extend blooming significantly, and every few years, dividing mature clumps keeps the plants vigorous and productive. One thing gardeners love about daisies is how they soften landscapes. They create a relaxed, welcoming feel instead of an overly formal look. If your garden feels too stiff or heavy, adding daisies immediately changes the mood. Perennial 7, Lavender. Now let's talk about one of the most fragrant and calming perennials you can grow, lavender. Lavender isn't just beautiful, it completely changes the atmosphere of a garden. The silver foliage, purple blooms, and intense fragrance create that peaceful Mediterranean look people spend thousands trying to recreate. And once established, lavender is incredibly low maintenance. This plant thrives in poor, dry soil and actually performs worse in rich, wet conditions. Overwatering is one of the fastest ways to kill it. Lavender thrives in USDA zones 5 through 9 and needs full sun and excellent drainage. If your soil stays wet, grow it in raised beds or containers instead. The reward is months of fragrance, constant pollinator activity, and a plant that looks beautiful even when not blooming. Bees absolutely cover lavender flowers non-stop. Another advantage? Deer and rabbits usually avoid it because of the strong scent. You can also harvest lavender for drying, homemade sachets, oils, teas, and decorations. Few plants offer this combination of beauty, fragrance, usefulness, and durability. Perennial 8, Hostas. Now let's shift into shade gardening, because not every yard gets blazing sunlight. Hostas are the kings and queens of shade gardens. Technically, hostas are grown more for foliage than flowers, but many varieties produce beautiful spikes of lavender or white blooms during summer. What makes hostas legendary is their ability to transform dark, difficult spaces into lush, tropical-looking gardens. Their leaves come in countless shapes, textures, and colors: deep green, blue-green, chartreuse, variegated white, even giant varieties with leaves bigger than dinner plates. Once established, hostas return reliably every year and become larger and more dramatic over time. They thrive in partial to full shade and prefer consistently moist soil. Unlike drought-loving plants like lavender, hostas appreciate regular watering. USDA zones 3 through 9 are ideal. The biggest enemy of hostas? Slugs. If you control slugs early, hostas become incredibly easy to maintain. And when grouped together in layers of different sizes and colors, they create stunning texture even without flowers.
Perennial 9, Bee Balm. If you want your garden buzzing with pollinators constantly, Bee Balm is a powerhouse. Bee Balm produces wild, shaggy-looking blooms in red, pink, purple, and white that hummingbirds absolutely cannot resist. Seriously, hummingbirds attack these flowers like magnets. The blooms look energetic and explosive, giving gardens a more natural, lively appearance. Bee balm spreads aggressively over time, making it excellent for filling empty spaces quickly. Some gardeners even have to divide it regularly to keep it under control. It thrives in full sun to partial shade and prefers soil that stays moderately moist. Also, USDA hardiness zones 3 through 9 are ideal. One thing to watch for is powdery mildew, especially in humid climates. Proper spacing and airflow help prevent this issue dramatically. Beyond its beauty, bee balm belongs to the mint family, which means the leaves are aromatic and sometimes used in teas. This is one of the best plants for building a pollinator garden that feels alive from morning to evening. Perennial 10. Coreopsis. Coreopsis is what happens when you combine non-stop flowers with almost no maintenance. These cheerful yellow, orange, pink, or red blooms flower relentlessly for months, and I mean relentlessly. Some varieties start in early summer and barely stop until frost. Coreopsis thrives in USDA zones 4 through 9. They love poor soil, hot weather, drought, and neglect. In fact, too much fertilizer often reduces blooming. This is one of those plants you can almost ignore and still get rewarded with armloads of flowers. The foliage stays compact and tidy, making Coreopsis perfect for borders, pathways, and front-of-bed planting. Pollinators love it, deer usually avoid it, and deadheading spent blooms encourages even more flowers. If you want maximum color with minimum effort, Coreopsis deserves a place in your garden. Perennial 11. Phlox. Garden phlox produces massive clusters of fragrant flowers that completely dominate summer flower beds. The blooms come in pink, purple, white, red, and bicolored combinations, and often carry a sweet fragrance that intensifies during warm evenings. One mature clump can create an enormous visual impact. Phlox thrives in full sun with fertile, well-draining soil and regular watering. It appreciates better soil than some tougher prairie perennials, but the payoff is huge flower production. USDA zones 3 through 8 are ideal. Butterflies especially love phlox flowers. The biggest challenge is mildew in humid climates, but resistant varieties and good airflow solve most problems. What makes phlox valuable is its ability to bridge seasonal gaps. It blooms during that important mid-summer period when spring flowers are finished, but fall flowers haven't peaked yet. And when planted in masses, phlox creates breathtaking walls of color. Perennial 12. Yarrow. Yarrow is one of the toughest perennials you'll ever grow. Heat? Fine. Drought? Fine. Poor soil? Fine. Neglect? Completely fine. Yet despite being so rugged, yarrow produces beautiful flat-topped flower clusters in shades of yellow, pink, red, white, and peach. The fern-like foliage adds texture even when the plant isn't blooming. Yarrow thrives in full sun and sharply drained soil. In overly rich soil, it often flops over because the growth becomes too soft. USDA zones 3 through 9 are ideal. This is another perennial pollinators adore. One underrated feature of yarrow is how long the blooms last. Fresh flowers look great in arrangements, and dried flowers hold their color surprisingly well. Yarrow also spreads gradually over time, helping fill empty spaces naturally without becoming overwhelming. And because it thrives in difficult conditions, it's excellent for low-water gardens and hot climates. Perennial 13. Russian Sage. If you love soft, dreamy gardens filled with movement, Russian sage is spectacular.
This perennial produces clouds of lavender blue flowers on tall silvery stems that sway beautifully in the wind. From a distance, mature Russian sage almost looks like purple mist floating above the garden. It thrives in USDA zones 4 through 9 in full sun, intense heat, drought, and poor soil. Once established, it needs very little water. And because deer and rabbits dislike the fragrant foliage, it's often left alone. Russian sage combines especially well with coneflowers, black-eyed Susans, and ornamental grasses for that modern prairie-style garden look. One mature plant can become surprisingly large, often 4 feet tall and wide, so spacing matters. But when given room, it creates an absolutely stunning effect. Perennial 14, Astilbe. Now let's return to shade, because shaded gardens deserve color too. Astilbe produces feathery plumes of flowers in shades of pink, white, red, and lavender that rise above deeply textured foliage. These plants thrive in moist, partially shaded areas where sun-loving flowers fail completely. They flourish in USDA zones 3 through 9. Astilbe adds elegance and softness to woodland gardens, shaded borders, and damp areas. Unlike tougher drought-tolerant perennials, Astilbe prefers consistently moist soil. If it dries out too much, the foliage quickly suffers. But in the right conditions, it becomes incredibly reliable and returns larger every year. The flower plumes also dry beautifully on the plant, extending visual interest long after blooming ends. If you have a shady area that feels dull and lifeless, Astilbe can completely transform it.
Perennial 15. Sedum. Last, but definitely not least, sedum, especially upright sedums like autumn joy. This plant may be one of the most dependable perennials ever created. Sedum stores water in its thick, succulent leaves, making it extremely drought-tolerant. It thrives in full sun, poor soil, and hot weather. The flower heads start green, slowly turn pink, then deepen into rich coppery red shades as fall approaches. That means sedum actually becomes more beautiful later in the season when many gardens are declining. Pollinators absolutely swarm sedum blooms in late summer and fall when food sources become scarce. And during winter, the dried flower heads continue adding structure and interest to the garden. This is one of the best 4-season perennials because it contributes beauty long after flowering ends. They excel in USDA zones 3 through 9. Now, here's something most gardeners don't realize. Choosing the right perennials is only half the battle. The other half is avoiding the mistakes that stop them from thriving long-term.
Biggest perennial mistakes. Mistake number 1, planting without considering sunlight. A shade-loving Astilbe placed in scorching sun struggles constantly. Lavender, planted in deep shade, becomes weak and leggy. Matching plants to the correct light conditions changes everything. Mistake number 2, overwatering. This kills more perennials than underwatering. Plants like lavender, yarrow, sedum, and Russian sage hate constantly wet soil. Their roots rot quickly in soggy conditions. Mistake number 3, overcrowding. Tiny nursery plants eventually become massive mature clumps. People plant everything too close together, creating airflow problems, disease, and constant competition for nutrients. Mistake number 4, skipping division. Some perennials, especially daylilies and hostas, benefit enormously from being divided every few years. Division rejuvenates plants and creates free new ones. Mistake number 5, over-fertilizing. Too much fertilizer often creates huge leafy plants with fewer flowers. Many of the best perennials actually bloom better in average or even poor soil. And mistake number 6, cutting everything down too early in fall. Leaving seed heads and dried flower stalks through winter provides food for birds, shelter for beneficial insects, and beautiful winter texture. Your garden doesn't have to disappear just because summer ends.
Now here's the beautiful thing about perennial gardening. Every single year gets easier. The roots grow deeper. The plants grow stronger. The blooms become larger. The maintenance decreases. And eventually, your garden begins working with you instead of against you. That's when gardening becomes truly enjoyable. Imagine walking outside every spring knowing your flowers are already coming back. No starting over, no rebuilding from scratch, no buying endless trays of annuals just to refill empty beds again. Just stronger, fuller, more beautiful plants returning year after year. That's the real power of perennials. So here's your action plan. Don't try to plant all 15 at once. Start with 3 or 4 that match your climate and sunlight conditions. Build gradually. Let the plants establish properly. Focus on long-term structure instead of instant perfection. A year from now, your garden will already look dramatically different. 3 years from now, it'll look mature. 5 years from now, people will assume you hired a professional landscaper. And before you leave, I want to hear from you. Which of these 15 blooming perennials would you plant first in your dream garden? Or which one are you already growing successfully? Drop it in the comments, because gardeners always discover incredible new ideas from each other. If this video helped you, hit the like button, subscribe to Plant Care Secrets TV, and share this with someone who keeps replanting flowers every single year. Because once you discover the right perennials, gardening becomes easier, cheaper, and far more rewarding. Plant once, grow forever, and let your garden get better every single year.